So I was recently thinking about what a mess I was in my 20s. And I started really thinking like, what were some of the things that I could have done that would have like drastically improved my life? And I really boiled it down to two things. And that was improving my productivity and avoiding procrastination. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think that your 20s should just be about being productive, because you should have fun in your 20s. That's the time of figuring yourself out. That's a time of adventure. That's a time of least responsibility. And honestly, it's the best time for you to screw up and fix your mistakes along the way. But the problem is that too many of us squander our youth and we waste a lot of time. And productivity and procrastination are two of the things that if you can improve one and eliminate the other, you can really make better use of your time and put yourself in a better position for your future. That way you don't have to play catch up when you're in your 30s like I had to. So with that said, let me go ahead and get right into some of the productivity tips that I have, and then I'll follow up with some of the procrastination traps that I think that you should avoid when you're in your 20s. The first one is going to be setting clear goals. And I'm going to use a quote or a bit of a monologue by Earl Nightingale that I think describes the reasons to set clear goals perfectly. I should read it in my Earl Nightingale voice. Think of a ship with the complete voyage mapped out and planned. The captain and crew know exactly where the ship is going and how long it will take, and it has a definite goal. And 9,999 times out of 10,000, it will get there. Now let's take another ship, just like the first, and only let's not put a crew on it or a captain at the helm. Let's give it no aiming point, no goal, no destination. We just start the engines and let it go. I think you'll agree that if it gets out of the harbor at all, it will either sink or wind up on some deserted beach and a derelict. It can't go any place because it has no destination and no guidance. I think that perfectly describes why you should set clear goals. So, how do you set clear goals? There's a lot of goal setting techniques out there, but I personally like the SMART method. And SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. So let me give you an example of what a SMART goal is versus a vague goal. So specific, I want to lose 10 pounds. Measurable, I will track my weight loss progress every week. Attainable, I will accomplish this by working out 30 minutes a day for 5 days a week and eating a healthy diet. Relevant, this goal is important because I want to feel better, I want to look better, and I want to lose some weight. Time bound, I will accomplish this goal in the next 3 months. So what is a vague goal? Well, a vague goal is just saying, I want to lose weight or I want to get in shape. There's not a lot that you can do with that. You also don't give yourself a clear destination, because if you don't set goals, you have nothing to be productive towards. And getting good at setting goals and accomplishing goals, crossing off the to-do list, is something that is super important when it comes to trying to improve your productivity and when you're getting your life together. I want to say, like, you gotta learn to get organized. This is a skill that you gotta hone. You gotta work on it constantly. I struggle with this still. I'm almost 40. I always pride myself in being organized chaos. When I had my home office, my drawers and stuff would be a mess, but I knew where everything was. But that puts a lot of extra mental strain and extra mental energy on having to think about the things that you need to do. So if you're spending a lot of your mental energy just trying to remember the things that you need to do because you're not writing them down or you're not using a tool like Sunsama, then you end up wasting a lot of time because your brain is not meant to keep track of a lot of information. Getting Things Done is a great book that talks about getting organized.
And your mind is for having ideas, but not for holding them.
And I highly recommend that book. That was super helpful for me. I also recommend using products that make being organized easier. I know that there's a lot of tools out there, but I want to talk about today's sponsor, Sunsama. I've used a lot of different productivity apps, and Sunsama is the one I wish I would have found first. The reason why I like it so much is that it's more than just a to-do list. It's like having your own personal assistant that guides you through your day. Sunsama helps me start my morning with a clear plan so I know exactly what I need to accomplish for the day. It does that by prompting me to plan my day every day, helping me be intentional with my time. One of the features that I love is the overload alert, because if I end up planning more than 7 or 8 hours of work, Sunsama will bump off the non-essential stuff so that I can work on that tomorrow. This helps prevent burnout and helps me focus on what I really need to get done. Speaking of focus, Sunsama has a focus mode that's an absolute game changer, especially if you're someone who struggles with ADHD or just being scatterbrained like I am. Another great feature is that if you have tasks that are scattered across email, project management tools, and calendars, Sunsama unifies them all into one place so that you can keep track of your tasks easier and not get overwhelmed by having everything scattered around. Sunsama is used by many professionals and top companies like Uber and Spotify. And the best part is that you can try it for free without even having to enter any credit card information. So if you want to plan sustainable work days, improve your productivity, and prevent burnout, make sure to check out Sunsama today at sunsama.com/a/Dorian Develops. I'll make sure to leave a link down in the description and in the comments as well. All right, let's get back to the video. So now that I got goals out of the way, I want to talk a little bit about time management. This is something that you just don't think about when you're in your 20s because you're young and you feel like you have all the time in the world. And next thing you know, you're almost 30 and time has just slipped you by and you don't know where the last 10 years went. You feel like high school is just yesterday. You feel like you just got out of college, and the truth is now you're almost 30 and you're a complete mess. That's a familiar feeling that I had myself, so I totally understand. And I do think that if it's one thing that can really, really help you be more productive and avoid procrastination, it would be time management. And I recommend getting on top of your time and figuring out where you spend all your time. Some people, like my wife, prefer the old school pen and paper, the old school paper calendar. She has binders and notebooks full of her notes and things that she needs to do. I prefer to use digital products to track this stuff because I'm a tech guy. I prefer doing stuff on my phone or on my laptop, but there's something about writing that helps you remember it. I still use pen and paper for a lot of stuff. I got this little notebook that I carry in my pocket. I'll write some things down on pen and paper, but then I put it on a digital productivity app like Sunsama, but use whatever works best for you. I want to talk about how to avoid distractions or the importance of avoiding distractions. I know how hard it is, but it's so important. If you're trying to be productive, you have to eliminate distractions. It's crazy how much more productive you can be and how much more you can get into focus mode when you eliminate your distractions and don't allow yourself to get distracted. I wake up and when I work in the morning, I tell myself I am gonna focus. I'm putting my phone on Do Not Disturb. I'm turning on all the apps to block the apps that I don't want. And I am going and I am focusing, and I'm not gonna let anything distract me unless it's like an emergency for my family. Those are the only distractions that I will allow. And then it's just headphones on and work mode. It's something that I wish I would have learned how to do that when I was younger, and I wish that I would have had a little more discipline to avoid those distractions, but it's a work in progress. I'm still working on that myself, and I fight every day to not get on social media. I have all kinds of different things that I use to eliminate distraction. I went with a dumb phone for a while. I made videos on that, and that didn't really work out for me. I got this thing, and it's called The Brick. I think I might do a video on that, but that blocks distractions from my phone. I have the Freedom app on my MacBook Pro that I use to eliminate distractions on there to prevent me from going on websites that I don't want to use when I'm trying to focus. But figure out what works for you and do that. Let's get into the procrastination traps right now. Perfectionism. Perfectionism is the biggest procrastination trap that I think that so many of us fall into because so many of us see other people that have accomplished things and we feel that their version of what we're trying to do is near perfect. And when we think about making something perfect, we start thinking about all the work that goes into that. And it leads us into either over-researching or over-analyzing stuff or just getting overwhelmed to the point where we don't want to do it because we're fearful that we can't make it perfect, so why even bother? But the truth is that a lot happens between starting and perfection. And the only way that you can get to perfect is by trial and error. I made a video talking about get started, make it messy, and clean it up along the way. And that's the way I think that you should approach perfectionism, because it will just help you get comfortable with being messy and realize that perfection happens in that mess most of the time. Another procrastination trap that you need to avoid is the fear of failure. When I was in my early 20s, I never did shit because I was worried that I was gonna fail. And every time I did fail, it just made me feel worse about myself. It made me feel like I was never going to accomplish anything. And it took me years to realize that those failures are what actually makes you better. You're never going to start off something and do it exactly right the whole way through and just arrive at the finish line like, oh, that was easy. And when we're presented that on social media, on TV, in sports, in business, and in all different areas of life where you see success, we always see the end product. We always see the end result. We see the overnight success that took 10, 20 years to become an overnight success. You don't see those people when they were in the grind. You don't see them when they were failing and they were just going through it. And when you're young, you feel that, I don't want to try because I'm going to fail. And if I fail, I'm a loser and I'm never going to be as good as that next person who is super successful, because we just don't realize that that next person went through a bunch of failure, but they were just too hard-headed to quit. And it's just something that you have to get over if you want to be successful. Fail quick, fail often, move on, and keep working towards what you're trying to do. That is the best way to approach failure, because learning from your failures is the only way that you will eventually get to your ultimate goal. The next thing I'm going to say is productive procrastination. This was brought up in one of my calls. Shout out to Ari, because I hadn't heard that term before, but as soon as he said it, like, it clicked and I was like, yeah, I know exactly what productive procrastination is. I do it all the time. There's a place for podcasts and videos and books and courses and tutorials, but eventually, if you're doing nothing but watching videos on a subject, or if you're doing nothing but listening to podcasts, or if you've read 10 books on business, but you haven't started a business, you do 100 courses on learning how to code, but you haven't built anything. That's why in programming, when people are self-taught programmers, there's that term tutorial hell. People get stuck in these productive procrastination cycles, and it's very easy to get fooled by it, but it's tricky because there is value in it. There's constructive value that comes from learning and listening to podcasts and watching videos and doing courses and reading books, but you have to be able to identify when you are procrastinating. So be careful with productive procrastination. It's a slippery slope, and next thing you know, you won't be doing anything and you'll just be watching and consuming content rather than doing the thing that you have been consuming and watching content on. So let's talk about lack of motivation, or waiting for motivation. When we're in our 20s, we feel like we need a moment of inspiration. We need a moment of motivation, and it works sometimes. And I remember when I was younger, listening to a lot of like motivational speakers and Les Brown and Tony Robbins and like all of these gurus who are there to like whip you into shape and talk you into doing something.
What the f*** is going on with you?
And the truth is that motivation is bullshit. And it all comes down to discipline, because motivation will only get you there some of the time, because you're never going to be motivated to do it every single day. I work out regularly. There's days that I don't go because I'm not feeling motivated, but I always make sure to go X amount of days in a week because I'm disciplined. So yeah, I might skip a Tuesday, but I'm going the next day because I won't skip 2 days in a row, because I know how important it is to stay disciplined. And if I waited for motivation, I'd still be fat and probably unemployed playing video games, living with my mom. I was motivated to learn how to code by money and wanting to improve my life, but the truth is that I only stuck with it because I was disciplined. I wasn't motivated every day. I didn't want to sit in front of my laptop every single day, but I did it because I really, really wanted to accomplish the goal of getting my job as a self-taught programmer, and I was able to do that. And discipline is so much more important than motivation. Don't fall for that trap of thinking you need motivation. You need to get started and you need to keep going, whether you like it or not, because that's the only way to get stuff done. The last thing I want to say is the biggest procrastination trap that you can fall into is not recognizing your procrastination cycles. We all have them. We all binge too much YouTube or Netflix. We all binge too many video games, and we binge too much social media scrolling. And we have these moments in our lives where we do these things that make us feel like shit. And it may not happen the first night. You play some video games one night and you're like, it's cool. It was just one time. I can live off of 4 hours of sleep. No big deal. It was a new game that just came out. And then it was like, oh, there was a new Netflix series. That's cool. I watched 8 hours of Netflix. No big deal. But you do it too often, you'll start feeling guilty about it. At least I know I did. And I feel that everybody probably does, but they probably disregard these feelings. And it was easier for me to overlook that when I was younger. And I wish that I would have recognized these cycles of procrastination and just laziness that I would go through. And it would feel the same way that it felt like after a long night of drinking, where you wake up the next day and you feel like shit because you're hungover. You feel like shit because you didn't get a lot of sleep. Your body hurts, you're tired, and you have this sense of guilt, this sense of questioning like why you did that thing. And I felt that same exact feeling when I gambled money away. I lived in Vegas for a while, and anytime I went out and gambled and lost like a couple $100, I'd always feel like, what the f was I thinking? You feel this empty dissatisfaction with yourself. And I have felt that same type of feeling because of playing too many video games, because of watching too much TV, because of doom scrolling, where I'm just like laying in bed watching TikTok or something. And this is like recent because I still struggle with this stuff. This is a work in progress. So life is a work in progress. None of us are perfect. And there's plenty of people that'll try to paint that perfect picture, but most of them are full of shit. The truth is that many of us keep working towards this stuff. And if you start feeling that feeling, chances are that you are stuck in a procrastination cycle, and your poison of choice, whatever it may be, might be making you feel that way. So recognize those cycles of procrastination. They're different for everyone, and they're hard to identify sometimes. But just be aware of those little devils that distract you from accomplishing the things that you want to do and end up making you procrastinate on the stuff that you're trying to work on. All right, with all that said, I hope you stuck around for it. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that you got value from it, and I hope that you enjoyed it. With all that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.